This is a rich LEGO minifigure, and this is a poor one. Today I'm building houses for each of them to live in and simulating a LEGO revolution to see which side would win. Out of the dozens of revolutions throughout history, I chose to recreate the French one, because this collectible LEGO minifigure is based on the style of that time. The comments named her Marie, and she comes with a little dog named Archibald, who barks in French. Oui. I'm building them a lavish mansion to show off their wealth to all those poor people she's the queen over, who we'll get to later. But for now, I laid out the spacious foundation of the mansion, with different rooms for various activities using only the finest white marble bricks. Not to be confused with marbles, which are really fun to build tracks for them to roll down, but make for lousy construction materials. I do like the look of these support columns though, so we can add a few on the front porch that Marie's butler Francois chiseled into this fancy pattern, except he missed a spot in the middle here where we can add steps up to the porch, which I decorated with this railing made from a bunch of 1x1 studs and put some flower boxes here in front of the front wall. I spent way too long adding all this ornate detailing around the windows, and the doorway had to be a lot wider than usual so Marie could actually fit through. She wants to put these huge oak doors on there and lock them tight so that none of the poor people can get inside, especially that smelly paper boy named Jack. Or actually in French that's pronounced Jacques. You gotta put your throat into it. Jacques. This kid barely earns enough food to survive by delivering the newspaper to everyone in town, including Marie. If her paper doesn't arrive precisely how she likes it, she calls Jacques' boss Fred to cut his pay for that day, and Jacques just goes hungry. He lives in this tiny little shack I made using all the broken brown pieces I've saved over the years to make it look super run down, and we'll also build houses like this for the rest of the city's poorest people. Everyone has their own stories of being mistreated by Marie, but they've never had a reason to do anything about it until today. It all started in the mansion's grand dining room, which by itself is bigger than Jacques' rat-infested shack and has a table filled with delicious food and a stool for Marie to sit on. One day she got bored of eating sauteed carrots grown by her gardener Garrick, so she repossessed an entire bakery's worth of baguettes from a poor old baker named Claude. All of these houses are going in my colonial-era LEGO city called 24ville, by the way, with sort of a shanty town down here, and the mansion will go up above when it's finished, both literally and figuratively looking down on all the citizens who just lost their entire food supply. Marie could not care less, but as I built her world-class kitchen with a checkered floor, stove, and fully stocked pantry, a small group of people banded together and formed a plan to revolt. Jacques painted one of his rats blue to scurry into the mansion's kitchen and steal back the bread, except it got distracted and just started cooking instead. He was caught by Marie's personal chefs Claire and Linguini, but honestly, let him cook. Everyone knows rodents have amazing culinary skills, and the three of them whipped up some ratatouille that transported Marie back to her childhood. Back then, she loved using her creativity to build new things, but her mother, Queen Marie I, put an end to it, saying it got in the way of ruling over their people. Now, Marie II wants a monopoly over creativity, making it illegal to practice outside the mansion's walls. She sent out a brutal police force to arrest painters and mimes and this mom who was just singing lullabies to her baby, throwing them all in prison while planning an extravagant ball for herself. This new law brought many more of the rebels' cause, who were quickly running out of space in Jacques' tiny shack. Luckily, his boss Fred allowed them to meet at the newspaper office of the 24ville Gazette to conspire. This place has a printing press where he arranges different letters covered in ink to usually print the newspaper that Jacques delivers. But now they're using it to circulate propaganda to the people, spreading the word that they would be infiltrating Marie's grand ball, which she's currently preparing for in her royal bedroom. I added one of those fancy canopy beds here, made with a bunch of telescope pieces and these capes taped to the side as curtains. This big vanity mirror is where she puts on all that makeup, and her closet is a lot bigger on the inside, where she hoards racks upon racks of the latest fashions. As she drifted off to sleep that night, blissfully unaware of the growing revolution, she had a dream about a different kind of revolution, an industrial one. She wanted to erect a massive steel tower in honor of herself, and to do that, she needed a factory. All right, listen, I promise, I don't have a problem. I can quit building factories at any time. But inside this steel factory, Marie forced some poor unpaid workers, including children, and these robots named Steely and Frenchie, to forge steel into these little rivet things. The smokestacks on top pumped a ton of pollution in the air, but that's not Marie's problem. She had already made Francois cut down some old tree to build a doghouse for Archibald, put a dam in the river, and blew up an entire volcano to make space for her mansion, so she she clearly didn't care about the environment. But now it was time to use these rivets to assemble her vision. It took 14 hours to build this thing on stream, and when it was done, Marie called it the Eiffel Tower, the tallest Lego set of all time. It's so massive I literally had to punch a hole in my ceiling so I could get it to fit in the city. This thing is glorious, but at what cost? The thick smog in the air is getting tons of people sick, and Marie refuses to do anything about it. At this point, she's robbed them of their food, creativity, freedom, and now even their health, and it's about time they strike back. On the night of the grand ball, everything was set up just right in the ballroom. Francois polished these golden pillars, Marie hired world-class musicians to play, and invitations were sent out to all her rich friends so they could celebrate their wealth together. But the revolution had other plans. Jacques swiped an invitation off a visiting archduke, which gave him a free ticket in. While the other guests were distracted with the hors d'oeuvres, he discreetly propped the door open. The rest of the rebels were waiting outside, waiting for the perfect moment to strike in 3, 2, 1. Absolute chaos ensued. Bankers and countesses were hiding under tables, Sleepy Louie ransacked the wine selection, the musicians were just going nuts, and Jacques snatched up the thing they had come for. Most of them were able to escape, but a few ended up captured and thrown in prison. Marie locked eyes with Jacques as he ran away, holding the one thing in the world that meant most to her. Archibald. Oh, it was personal now. She had these wanted posters made and plastered all over town, having her police force scour the streets for even the slightest sign of Jacques. The entire second floor of her mansion was now solely dedicated to eradicating any resistance to her rule. And to do that, she needed some help. I made this Lego Napoleon minifigure who started drafting a battle plan to regain dominance. Step 1 was building a railroad to control the flow of goods in and out of town. It was a little sketchy running the tracks under the Eiffel Tower, and I had to rearrange a few buildings for it, but soon enough, the repurposed Disney train was chugging right along through the tunnels in the cliffside. Step 2 of the plan is... I was wondering when Garrett was gonna show up. Marie informed him that some evil criminals are on the loose, and if he helps her stop them, she'd make him rich. As someone who's faced misfortune after misfortune in every era he's time traveled to, this sounded like a dream come true. So he got right to work with step 2, building up defenses and debushes. He worked with Marie's gardener Garrick to trim them all to perfection. This should help keep even more riffraff away. But Napoleon knows that the best defense is a really big gun. He's got racks just full of artillery and put some cannons out front to fire. Back then, soldiers would even attach swords onto their muskets, called bayonets, and they used them to arrest tons of suspected rebels. But when the prison reached full capacity, they needed a way to empty it out with step 3. The guillotine. This awful device was used during the French Revolution to literally cut people's heads off. I mean, with Lego, you can always just put them back on, but ignore that. Pierre the Painter, dead. Mimi the Mime, also dead. Sleepy Louie? R.I.P. Louis. The rebels couldn't do anything to save their friend without giving themselves away. But Louis' sacrifice inspired the remaining people in town to join their cause, and they started tearing Jacques' posters down. At the same time, Garrett was feeling very uneasy about everything. Marie insisted these criminals deserved it, but he began to realize he was on the wrong side here. Once I added this fancy schmancy roof, the mansion was officially complete, being one of the most detailed and just insane things I've ever built. Everyone got together inside it for one final briefing, where Napoleon had made a scale model of the city he used to station troops around, kind of like a game of Risk. Meanwhile, the Revolution was also planning their next move very carefully. They definitely didn't want to rush into anything. But baby Andre couldn't bear the thought of losing his mom, so he came in guns blazing and immediately broke her out of prison. Luckily, none of the guards were around, and it was actually super easy. Too easy. The revolution had been ratted out, and now they were trapped with only one way to escape. Everyone scrambled up the tower with Marie's army hot on their tails. They were completely outnumbered and didn't stand a chance until reinforcements from the factory arrived. Jacques kept climbing higher and higher until someone stopped him, Garrett. Marie was screaming at him to push him down, but as he looked into the kid's eyes, he knew no amount of money in the world was worth believing her lies anymore. He let Jacques go and even bought him some more time. Marie was enraged and demanded Francois carry her all the way up. But to be honest, he had to put up with quite enough of her garbage at this point and defected as well. So at the absolute end of her rope, she had Napoleon bring out the biggest cannon they had to blast her up and face Jacques herself. It all came down to this.
Give me my dog back!
Okay. Marie's tyranny had finally been defeated. The people chopped off her wig, locked her up for life, and started tearing down her egotistical monument. They elected Claude as their new leader and established the freed city of 24ville. Comment below how many historical inaccuracies you counted, and let's finally bring Garrett home. For real this time.